just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other.
Coach, so the more that you know, the less that you know.
The more I see, the less I know.
The more you see, the less I know. And you're winning because of that.
You said that part. No, I didn't say that part. But I'm willing to hear you out with that part. Yeah.
It's the clarity that was shown to me actually through the mind scan, the powerful tool that we have for understanding our thinking patterns. We have two measures in the mind scan, of course, value and of clarity. And that clarity, the bigger the circle you've got, that's just how it represents on the mind scan, the more clarity you have. And sometimes someone will have a small circle, which indicates small clarity. And that hasn't quite always sat in my mind with clarity. Meaning like that there was a conflict. Well, how can I be zoomed out and zoomed in, not have clarity? And I found that some people would say they felt clear on certain things, even though they had a small circle. And so that can be true, right? And that was the distinction I made. It was only a couple of weeks ago I made this distinction. So I didn't think about it before really, but you got a small circle. The mind scan is saying that you've got less clarity. But that person can still feel clear. And what the mind scan is saying, if you've got like a whole pie, let's say you've got a small circle, maybe in that pie you're seeing 20% of the whole pie. For you, 20% is 100%. 20% is everything. Then you say, I'm really clear about what I can see, and it can really feel clear. Like I've got horse blinders on. The horse has got horse blinders on, so the place he's looking is 20% of his whole environment, but he's very clear about where he's going and gets to his destination because that's where he's focused. What you focus on is what you get. So it can appear that you're very clear in where you're going. And what would happen if you take off those horse blinders? Or what would happen if you start to change the angle of those horse blinders? And that 20% that he was very clear on, that he thought that was 100% of his world, he starts to realize is not. Everything changes. I was really clear at 100% of my world, but actually it was only 20% of the actual world. So now you know more, but you realize that you know less. Because now let's say you get twice as amount. Maybe they see 40% of the actual picture, but you've only just seen that extra 20%. So you're still adjusting to figuring out what the hell that is. So even though now your world is wider, bigger, potential is bigger, and you're learning more, you're above that 20% immediately because you're going to figure some stuff out, it may feel like you know less. Because now your world is bigger, but I'm still expanding into the possibilities of the next barrier. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction that when it feels like somebody knows less, or I'll just use myself in this example because I was the one, I answered it that way, right? It's not knowing less, it's knowing less of the percentage of what's out there. Like it's like it's kind of like our understanding of the cosmos, right? Like we continue to see the expansion of the universe and what all is out there. And so what we know in our little, as we grow up, we just know Earth, right? Earth is and then it becomes one of the planets. All right. So we're in a solar system, and like all of a sudden it's this huge expansive thing that we're just this tiny little part of. And it's like, it can be overwhelming to expand your awareness to such a greater understanding of what's out there that it's like, it can be overwhelming. Yeah. But to your point, like it's the gateway, right? Like now we know that's out there, so we know what else there is to know or what else there is to learn.
Yeah. So I say ignorance is bliss. Right? So you got your 20% of the world, and you're like, I got all of it. Like, feels good. So you might argue, why would you want to expand that?
Yeah.
And each to his own as to what that might feel like and whether that is appropriate or not. I haven't told this story for a long time, but I think about this guy I went to school with, and I remember he wasn't like a really really good friend of mine, but he's like in the circle of friends. He's a good enough friend. Sometimes you got those friends like you friends when you're growing up where like they would be in the circle of friends, but you wouldn't necessarily hang out with them one on one. And when you hung out with them one on one, they like extended that. And you're like, oh, this person is cool by themselves. So it's not. It's like what I'm talking about. That doesn't happen
Oh yeah.
anymore. And but he was in that place, and he left school and got like a job immediately at a place where his dad helped him get a job, and he was like a salesman at this kitchen company, like would make kitchens for customers. So he did well doing that. I remember he had a girlfriend right out of school who was really good looking, and he had a little sports car in Nissan 350Z, and he had that, and he bought a house around the corner from his parents. All done, all that stuff until like by the time he was like 19 or something, and he ticked all the boxes that are supposed to be ticked as to what you're supposed to do when you leave school. I'm talking about high school, right, and get into whatever that next part is. Like he was happy. And I had no idea where he is now, what he's doing, or what's happened to him. But just in that little place, he's happy up until his whatever his scale is, right? And I represent it like a scale of 1 to 10, right? He might be like 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 on his scale, but let's just say his scale only goes to 5. So he sees perhaps the glimpse of other opportunities, but it's like why lose all this? I'm percentage wise like in the high 90s of what's available for my happiness. Why would I change anything? And but things happen in life, right, where that scale gets blown out. We see things we're exposed to, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. If you're at a 4.6 out of 5 scale and suddenly something happens, wham, you see something, and now your scale is 100, you got a lot of pain all of a sudden. Went
Yeah.
from 95 to 5
You're
percentage.
right. I think about this a lot because I think it's a principle of the universe, right? That I think it's like a law of thermodynamics that everything is becoming more chaotic as we go on. So what does that mean in whatever direction it's going? Things are changing. Like a change is a constant of the universe. I use a bit of an oxymoronical term there. And so if you're not changing, then you're actually going against one of the laws. It's if it doesn't feel uncomfortable right now, it will inevitably feel uncomfortable at a certain point in time. So the only
Yeah.
solution to that is to change with the change or to create your own change to like stay ahead of the curve. Because if you don't, and why I say I think about this a lot is because I think we are, generally speaking, people work towards achieving a certain level so they can live comfortably, right? So they don't have to worry about some of the problems that they might have with paying bills or some of the financial crunch that they might feel. So that's why it feels like, well, if I just earn this amount of money or get to this point in my professional career, my problems will go away. Which is not true, right? It's always replaced by like one of our favorite terms, upgrade your problems, right? Like, we want better problems to have. Um, now I got to worry about decorating my third house. Like, what the hell? This is so stressful here. Versus worrying about paying bills, right? So I share that because the principle of change. Like I used to have a lot of resistance to change. I like feeling comfortable, feeling like I know things, and it's just a belief system. If I also like not knowing things, then man, is the world absolutely teed up for me because I'm going to not know a lot of things.
It's freeing to go. It's always going to change, no matter how bad it is, no matter how good it is. So, what's the only way to act? The only way to be is to constantly move towards create the next thing that sounds or appealing or is of interest or is pulling you towards it. Because if we stand still or slow down, even, then things are going to overtake us, right? Things are going to get worse. There's never, I got it all figured out. It's never, I've got it figured out. And sometimes it can feel like that, right? I mean, we talked the other day about the stepping stones of the AAA approach of that cycle, and we're constantly on the upgrade of that and different parts of it. Some of it, the placement of that can appear like it's a plateau, like it's stationary, like it's done. But those things, the only difference is the speed at which you're moving. You know, if you don't keep moving forward, then you will eventually be moving backwards. And that's the skill to know. Because if it was the same way all the time, we'd have figured this stuff out. But it's always changing. There's no constants. Again, the same principle of like this. Well, the last time I felt like this, it lasted 3 months. Last time this happened, it lasted 2 months. And this time, it might be 2 seconds. It could be 3 years. But if we're constantly going, what do I want to create here? Where am I going? Who am I? Who do I want to be? What activities am I in charge of? What do I want to move towards? Then we can create the illusion that we're in control.
Yes. So even when we feel like we're in control, we're not in control, Coach.
But there's so many variables. There's so many things that could happen. And even if the odds of those things might be smaller, still there, right? Still really just an illusion, because who knows what's going to happen. But that's a much better game to play. It's like, which one's a better game? The better game is to go, I'm in charge of what I can do. This is what I want to become, and I'm going to do actions towards the things I want to become and who I want to be and the value that I want to add. Nothing really more than that. What else is there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what else there is, Coach. What do you think? Does that cover it all? Are we done? Is this the last Truth Seekers?
Yeah, wrap. That's a wrap. We did it. We accomplished it. Well, that would be our version of staying comfortable and not growing and not expanding or not changing ourselves, right?
Right, which is exactly it, right? I mean, it's no whatever point you think that it's done, there's an end coming. That's the way, perfection's a low standard, because if you can create parameters to reach, you also create a box that you can't get out of. And then when I first kind of got that, I wrestled with that principle as well, because some things are done. And so I realized that you can create perfection in boxes, and some things do need to be like that. Like a movie, right? Or a TV show or a piece of art. They're all creative activities. And whenever you decide to say that that's done, that's done. And in that moment, whatever that was set out to is perfection for that particular thing. You could say, in this particular time frame, doing this, this, and this equals the outcome I want. And in effect, you could call that perfection in that box or the sphere.
Yeah, I think perfection requires time attached to it, right? Like if something's going to be perfect, then the second that you say it's perfect in that moment, but time keeps going anyway. So I think that's what you're saying, right? Like, yeah. So it's a low standard, because you're going to time goes on anyway. So if you get something and that's perfect, then at a certain point it will not be perfect, right? If time goes, but the growth doesn't.
Yeah, essentially he's saying, well, what does perfect mean? It means it's done, but there's nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, if there's no time component attached, the time will undo the perfection.
Right.
Because there's always more things you could do. But a piece of art, you could say, that was the time that was created in, and in that time, this was what we decided to say that when it was done, and therefore that itself is perfection. That's the intrinsic, right? Like, it cannot be judged against anyone.
Mm.
And whatever our chosen field is of creativity, we're all creators, right? We've all got something that we're doing and creating, whatever our business or our job is, we're doing something which is creative.
Speaking of which, maybe want to try something new at the back end of this episode if you're open to trying something new, Coach.
Let's do it.
We mentioned MindScan at the beginning of this episode, and I have a sample one up here. I'd just like to get your takeaways, your observations, what you might notice without knowing anything about this person. Are you open to that?
Sounds cool.
All right, so
Wow.
here we have a MindScan assessment. And I'm thinking, we got to be wary of some people who might not be able to see the screen if they're not watching on our YouTube channel. They might be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, etc. But what we're looking at on the screen here is our relator, doer, thinker of the external and internal worlds. And a number of people who might be consuming this episode may be familiar with this, but we also want to think about the people who might not be. So maybe just share, Coach, what your observation is of what's on the screen here.
Yeah, so we're looking at MindScan graph. We're looking at the three primary ways that we think in the middle there, related to a thinker, so people, action, and structure. And then we're looking at the two different dimensions, so internal and external. So we're looking at 6 different measurements of those, 6 different areas. And we're looking at a scale up and down, and we're looking at a circle, which denotes the clarity, how zoomed out that person is. Kind of what we talked about earlier. So is there a particular question on this, Coach? Or is it, how would I observe this overall and talk about this person? Is there a direction from what you know here?
Well, this person is in the middle of a job or career change. So that would explain some of the clarities. And I think that's where I wanted to go with when we talk about expansion of clarity and understanding. So maybe speak to that a little bit more with knowing this person's in career transition. 2 small circles on the graph are in what dimensions here?
Yeah, always looking at the things that are most extreme from a value point of view, so the scale +10 to -10, and also a clarity point of view, so the size of the circle, so really, really big or really, really small. And to your point, I would look at the thing that jumps off the page for me, bottom right, is self-direction, which is about someone's commitment to their future version of themselves. And this particular graph has a -10, meaning that bias, meaning that they don't value their future and who they want to become at all, in such a way that it's not just like, oh, it doesn't bother me. It's like they're actively seeking to go against moving forward in their life and who they are. And they're so pigeonholed into a very particular area of what that is. They don't want to be there. That they're forcing their way, pushing their way from it because it's just one specific area which they don't like. So they're not spending any time in that area from a positive sense. They're only thinking about not being there. So that's really challenging to think about any possibilities. So which leaves them stuck in taking any action in an external world because they don't see any other place that they could be than they are at, and they don't like it. Is how I think about their future. And then the middle part and the bottom, self-awareness, just as small in terms of clarity. So they can only see very few things that they actually could be good at, and roles that they play, and value that slightly more. So I'd say there's a little bit more opportunity in that space. There's not quite so much. There's a bit more value that they take from that as well, and then that really ties into the bottom left, which is like self-empathy, how they feel about their own feelings. A little bit more clarity there. So they're probably more aware of it hurts that they are ignoring how they feel about themselves. So lots of self-talk with this person. I go really easy with this person. They're beating themselves up a lot already, and actually quite surprising that they would already come to the table. I don't know the scenario for which they took a MindScan, but I would probably suggest that externally they don't really present like this. They're more middle of the road, but internally there's a lot of stuff going on.
And so any indication of how this might be an opportunity for this person? How might that be framed, that this is an opportunity here?
Fantastic opportunity. And I would check how open they are to be to talking about an opportunity, and then to look at their external strengths to see which of those they can leverage to start to move the internal stuff. Would they be willing to look at things beyond the things that they already see? Perhaps that person's been doing the same thing for a long time, being burnt into what possibilities they've looked at before and not got there for whatever reason. And I would be, once they accept that they'd be open to talking about that, I'd probably be jumping up and down, because the amount of potential upside there is huge because of that clarity they've got. It's they've discounted it for such a long time, and it's so unclear that the upside is just monumental. And that's what I would start to suggest to that person. If they're willing to look, they could be seeing some massive changes in their life. Huge.
And if we tie this all into a bow, I'm wondering, this might be a good theory to test out, that, the moment this person decides to make a career change or to leave a previous position, is that when the circles get real small? Because that's when you come to realize, like, how much is out there, right? Like, that's maybe they were committed more even in a poor role, but when they decide to leave, that's when it gets super uncommitted and tiny, because it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin here. And there's no way I'm committed to anything because I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, we're back to the form, storm, non-perform. If you're on any sort of mountaintop, you can see another mountaintop, and the first thing you do is walk down from the mountaintop, and you're now further away from where you wanted to go and where you were, your safe space, your comfort. In this place, it may not be that they saw another mountaintop; they just forced off the one that they were on. Right, so it gets worse before it gets better. The hero's journey, right? The hero has some comfort where they are, but they get pushed into doing something, taking action, taking on risk, and then at that point they can't go back; they can only go forward. So it's worse. Now I've got all this other shit to deal with, and I can't even go back to the comfort of things I know. Even if I didn't want it, at least it was comfortable. But that's not now available anymore. I can only go forward. So yeah, it could feel worse from a mind scan point of view and show that. But that's what's worth celebrating as well, because it's now going to start getting better. That's the opportunity to.
Somewhat of a tip of the cap to the burning of the ships, right? Like we're here now anyway. Like we can't go anywhere else, so it can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. All right, Coach. Any final thoughts?
That was cool. I'd like to get some feedback as to that person and where they are. Perhaps another point, but I think it'd be cool to start thinking about that. It'd be good to get some other feedback as well as to what other ways we can cover that and get deeper into some specifics around these principles we work on and the secrets of success. The answer secret after all, and that how we sharpen the saw, and perhaps we can go wherever we need to go, I suppose.
I'd like to set a megaphone next to the whispering of the secrets. Let's shout them from the rooftops here. Let's really get a magnifying glass and zoom in here.
You know it already.
Thanks, Coach. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
All right.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.